Coming up, a guilty verdict for the Coventry businessman who murdered a family of 4.
A grandfather calls for changes to dog laws after a girl is mauled by the neighbour's pet.
And great grub as the Good Food Show comes to town. That's ITV News Central at 6. Coming up, a businessman is found guilty of murdering a family of 4. The details next. Welcome to ITV News. On the programme tonight, guilty, the Coventry businessman who murdered a family of 4 in a row over money.
Calls for a change in the law after a girl is attacked by her neighbour's dog.
I was absolutely frightened to my core, actually. I mean, one's had nightmares after because you think about what could have happened.
The clock is ticking for the holder of a £12 million lottery ticket to claim their prize.
And a feast of culinary inspiration. The Good Food Show returns to Birmingham.
Good evening. It was the day the rest of the world was gripped by the royal wedding, but in a leafy suburb of Northampton, a horrific crime was being committed.
Today, Anne Jandu from Coventry was found guilty of murdering a family of 4. Jeff, Helen, Nancy and Alice Ding in what was described in court as a cold-blooded massacre.
The Chinese businessman wanted revenge after a lengthy legal battle with the Ding family left him with an £88,000 bill and facing financial ruin. Olivia Patterson reports.
They've flown across the world from China and sat through 2 weeks of at times horrific evidence. Today the Ding's relatives heard the fate of the man who butchered their family.
Today the verdict is murder. Ang Zhangdu deserves what he receives. Justice has been served. We can now say our piece to our families in heaven.
A father himself, An Xiangdu, knew the Dings well. Jeff, his wife Helen, 18-year-old Xing and Alice, who was 12. Normal, hard-working people, destroyed in a frenzied attack that may have lasted just minutes. Their relatives have spent the past 2.5 years trying to understand how a man who'd once been friends with Jeff and Helen Ding could slaughter them and their children.
We then heard the 999 call and the screaming of the 2 girls. All this evidence has hurt me and I'm really angry.
The defence said when he killed them, Du was not in his right mind, that depressed and on the edge he'd temporarily lost control. But the jury agreed with the prosecution and the police that he'd had a careful plan, carried out with ruthless efficiency. They found him guilty of 4 counts of murder.
Today we've seen justice done. This was a heinous crime committed by a man who knew what he was doing and went with a plan to kill an entire family in cold blood.
It was a plan that then took An Xiangdu across Europe by bus. Eventually, he was caught hiding in Morocco after a manhunt of more than a year. During that time, the Dings and the police must have doubted he would ever be caught. Finally, they have justice. Tomorrow, they'll be back in court to hear him sentenced for his horrific crimes.
That's Olivia Patterson reporting. So what prompted a former friend and business partner to massacre 4 members of the same family?
It appears it was all about money after the relationship between the Dings and the Dus deteriorated when their business venture fell apart.
It started as a friendship and became a successful business partnership. So what turned things so sour that it would lead one man to wipe out an entire family? From the start, it was all about money, the fuel for a bitter dispute which ended in quadruple murder.
Brutal, absolutely brutal. I think that was those kind of things is just beyond my imagination, and I believe beyond the imagination of any kind of human being. I mean, it's just non-human.
In 1999, the Doos and the Dings opened a Chinese medicine shop in Coventry, but they fell out, beginning a 10-year legal dispute between the two families, one the Doos ultimately lost. In 2012, we spoke to the Dings' friend and business partner Paul Delaney, who described the Doos' determination over the case.
They kept appealing and appealing. It finally went up to the Supreme Court, and finally the Supreme Court said, no, that's the end of it. You can't appeal anymore. And that's when we issued the writ against them to try to recover all our costs.
At 10 p.m. on the 28th of April 2011, Paul Delaney's lawyer posted an injunction through the door of Doos' home in Coventry. He saw An Xiang-du sitting inside.
Who knows what went through An Xiang-du's mind that night, but by the next morning it seemed he'd reached desperation. He wrote a goodbye note to his wife and son and set off for Northampton. At that stage he was already carrying the knife.
We do have this inbuilt sense of monitoring for injustice and the fact that he'd used the legal system hoping to gain justice, and in his eyes didn't at the end of the day. So you can imagine that is just something that's going to tip somebody over the edge. You know, that becomes so overwhelming because it is really a case of saying you've got nowhere to go now with this. This is the end of it.
The following day he carried out what was described in court as a massacre. Then he fled across Europe. Stephen Haig taught the Tuding girls the violin, and he got to know them well over the years. He says what happened still affects him very much.
The world had lost two very, very special people. In fact, the whole family. So needlessly, it would seem. Well, totally needlessly. And I think just the desperation of knowing that nothing could bring them back.
Since he was captured, An Xiang-du has said he wished he'd never left China. Had he stayed, he'd be looking forward to a life in freedom, not a possible life sentence for brutally ending 4 others. Olivia Patterson, ITV News.
Well, on to some breaking news now. ITV News understands 600 jobs are to go in Stoke-on-Trent with the closure of an administration centre for energy supplier npower.
It's thought staff will be told tomorrow morning that their work will be transferred overseas. Andy Bevan has been following the story as it's been emerging this afternoon and is in the newsroom now. Andy, what is the latest that you have?
Well, Sam, around 600 people work at npower's offices in Fenton, dealing with the administration of customer accounts. Now, the company's German owners, RWE, told staff back in February that their jobs were under review as part of a cost-cutting cull of almost 7,000 posts across Europe, including the UK. In all, up to 1,400 jobs could go in this country, with call centre operations being outsourced to another company and back-office work transferred to India. Well, npower's declined to comment on the predicted closure of Fenton, saying it prefers to tell its staff any news first before informing the media. But officials at the union Unison have called the closure a Christmas nightmare for staff and customers and say the move will damage npower's reputation even further. Now, that's clearly a reference to the price rises announced by the company last month, which will see gas bills increase by 11.1% and electricity bills by 9.3%.
Andy, thank you very much. And if you want more details on this story, go to the website itv.com/central.
A grandfather from Walsall is calling for a change to dangerous dog legislation after his granddaughter was, he says, almost killed by a neighbour's dog.
At a subsequent trial, a police officer described the animal as the most dangerous he had ever seen. But it was the owner's father who was prosecuted because he was in charge of the dog at the time. A warning that Callum Watkinson's report contains pictures of the victim's injuries.
Amy Hyruck needed 20 stitches in the back of her head after she was attacked by a neighbour's Japanese Akita in her grandparents' driveway. But her grandfather said it would have been worse but for the heroic actions of her father, Simon.
He jumped on the dog and there was a violent struggle during which he was bitten on both hands. He was knocked over, he was bitten on the leg very, very badly, and he was savaged.
Most of Simon's injuries are too graphic to broadcast. He needed a week in hospital and 2 operations to recover. Witnesses have described how the dog stalked Amy from its home across the street before pouncing on her.
Most dogs, when they do attack, they grip, and these sort of attack dogs do just that, and they then try to savage the actual victim, obviously break the neck. I was absolutely frightened to my core, actually. I mean, one's had nightmares after, because you think about what could have happened.
Neighbour Nirmal Singh was charged and eventually found guilty of allowing a dog to cause an injury. The animal actually belonged to his son, Amrit Pal, who escaped prosecution because he was out at the time.
Unfortunately, we're seeing too many of these type of attacks taking place where someone can walk away afterwards and play pass the parcel with responsibility for their action of their animal, which I think is totally wrong.
Peter is campaigning for a change in the law to hold owners more accountable wherever they may be at the time of an attack. As for Amy, her physical scars have healed and she says she has the family retriever to thank for helping her conquer her fear of dogs.
Because I've been around Lucy lots of times, she's like very playful, and the only thing she'll do is just lick you to death.
But she admits seeing an Akita might still make her a little anxious.
I would be a little bit scared, but I would be alright if my dad was there.
That report by Callum Watkinson. Other news, prisoners at a heavily criticised jail near Wolverhampton have staged a rooftop protest for the second time in just a few weeks. 6 men wearing high-visibility orange suits scaled the walls of HMP Oakwood and set up camp. The protest comes just weeks after 3 men climbed to the roof in a similar stunt. A report released earlier this year criticised the prison for its inexperienced staff, high levels of violence and easy availability of drugs.
Leicester Royal Infirmary has unveiled plans for a £48 million revamp of its A&E department. The hospital says it's because its accident and emergency was built to cope with 100,000 patients a year, but now deals with 160,000.
It's emerged that Andrew Mitchell faces a possible bill of £500,000 from his Plebgate legal battle. Mr. Mitchell's lawyers failed to submit his legal budget on time. He wants to pursue a libel case against the Sun newspaper and force a police officer to swear on oath that he contradicts the former Chief Whip's version of events at the Downing Street gates.
Parents in Dudley are celebrating after the council decided not to close 7 children's centres. The council had been considering closing the centres to make savings. They offer parenting classes, cookery lessons and CV writing clinics, and those who use the facilities describe them as a lifeline.
Still to come here on ITV News Central. Enough tasty treats to get your teeth into. The Good Food Show returns to Birmingham.
And it's turning colder once again. I'll have all the details for you in a few minutes' time.
Another day, another cheque worth up to £50,000 to give away. It can only be the People's Millions.
The People's Millions is back, handing out millions of pounds to good causes across the UK. And this year there are 4 prizes of £50,000 for projects in the West Midlands.
Last night we gave our first prize away to the Good Old Days project in Stoke-on-Trent, and tonight we're doing it again. During yesterday's programme you saw campaign videos from the Anthony and Cleopatra the musical and Cycle South Brum.
All your votes have been counted, and our reporter Stacey Foster took her big book of cheques to visit the winning project.
Well, tonight's winners of the People's Millions are here at Birmingham Town Hall rehearsing for a new show. And as they've won, thanks to your votes, they'll be able to put on a very special show with some school children in the near future. Let's go down and tell them the good news. Good afternoon, everyone. The results are in.
She's smiling.
And I'm pleased to tell you, you have won the People's Millions! Look at that. £49,822. How are you going to spend all of that money?
On a year of workshops and working with these wonderful children. I'm speechless. It doesn't often happen, does it, guys? No. Yes, it's going to be a fantastic year of adventure, musical mayhem in the best possible way, with some of the finest musicians that anyone could possibly want to work with some of the best teaching and support staff, and some of the most wonderful children. And it's a real privilege to be able to work with these kids, and that's why I'm so pleased that we've got this money, because I know this sounds like an awful cliche, it's not about us, it's about these children and the opportunity for us to be able to work with them. So thank you so much.
Well, congratulations to Orchestra of the Swan. They walk away as our second winners on the People's Millions, and we will be back to see how that performance goes. Congratulations!
Thank you.
Yes, congratulations to them. But don't worry, Cycle South Brum, they still have a chance to get their hands on the money. And we'll find out tomorrow which of our 3 runners-up received the most votes overall and will get our bonus prize.
But before then, we've got 2 more projects going head-to-head. The numbers to call are coming up, but first let's find out about the first project tonight, Inspired for Life.
Hi, I'm Peter from the Coventry and Warwickshire YMCA. We want to win the People's Millions vote to help us inspire and motivate young people.
If we win the money, we're going to spend it on helping homeless people, or people who have been homeless, on getting involved with workshops and 8-week courses, for example, of wheelchair basketball, or power kiting, or ultimate frisbee, or gardening, or any of the other things that we do. Here today, a few of the wheelchair basketball players from our club have been teaching some school children just the basics about wheelchair basketball. Some of them knew a little bit, some of them knew absolutely nothing, but it's just getting them a bit more aware and involved in it.
Yes! Great finish. Good shot.
We've also been doing snowboarding on a trampoline, which as far as we know is unique to Coventry and Warwickshire and isn't practised anywhere else. I think it's important because it gets people seeing a new side of life that they haven't seen before and realising that there's more to it than just sitting at home and doing nothing. You can get out there and make a difference. It can turn their life around and make them a new person.
I think if people get inspired by sport, they can go and make a difference where they are in their community.
They've completely opened my mind to so much other stuff that goes on in the world and the community and everything.
It'd be much better because I'd be able to expand the scene of wheelchair basketball.
We want to spend the People's Millions on a project coordinator, equipment and venue hire, so please vote for us!
Well, we'll tell you how to vote in just a couple of minutes.
But first, the final project this year is also keen for your votes. It's Sailable.
Hi, I'm Jackie from Bear Creek Adventure. We would like to win People's Millions to purchase 3 boats to get people with special needs sailing here at Edgbaston Reservoir.
With the money, we can access then 200 people, giving them 2 free sailing sessions each, which means that they're not going to have to worry about money, where they're coming from, which groups they're connected to. We can actually then target and look at individuals coming down that aren't part of a group.
Yeah, you want to sit up a bit? There you go. Is that better? You in now?
We provide water sports for pretty much all groups around the West Midlands and further afield. In the worst rain possible, like today, as you can see, the young people still enjoyed it and the people still enjoyed it. We can give people that aren't too sure that first comfort zone to get on the water, knowing that they can do it safely and more importantly, have fun.
It's really good fun because when you're in the boat, it's if you can chill.
When it's windy, you can go faster. But it was cold at the same time.
It is peaceful out there.
We would like to spend People's Millions on training staff
buying 3 new boats and giving 200 disabled people access to sailing on the water. So please...
And here is your chance to vote for the project you'd like to see get the money. For Inspired for Life, call 0871 626 8835. That's 0871 626 8835.
And for Saleable, call 0871 626 8836. That's 0871 626 8836.
Calls cost 11 pence from BT landlines. Calls from other landlines may vary, and from mobiles will be considerably more. Lines close at midnight tonight. Calls made after the closing time won't be counted. Please do not try to vote if you're watching on demand.
And we'll find out who wins in tomorrow's programme.
Now, still to come on ITV News Central. Feeling peckish? Well, you will be after our report on the Good Food Show. But first, it is time for tonight's sport.
ITV Central Sports Report, sponsored by WeWantAnyCar.com, the Cash for Cars website.
And we start with last night's football, where teams from League 1 and 2 were in action. Coming up, a remarkable refereeing mistake, which ended up playing a huge part in Port Vale losing at home. But Steve Clamp begins his roundup with our only victors in League 1.
Wolves are still top of the table after a win over Tranmere. Keeper Owen Fon-Williams won't want to see this ever again. Lee Griffith's speculative shot rolling in. David Edwards later wrapped up the win. A second consecutive away draw for Walsall. Craig Westcar heading in James Baxendale's cross to level in the 47th minute. Coventry's incredible form has truly deserted them. 3 second-half goals by Rotherham mean they've conceded 11 in 3 games. This one scored by Nuardiko. A bizarre defeat for Port Vale. This tackle from Preston's Joe Garner was in the referee's eyes worthy of a sending off. But after conferring with his assistant, he awarded the red card to Neil Kilkenny. He'd not been involved in the incident. Despite remonstrations, the referee stuck to his original decision. And then, who went on to score for the visitors? But of course, Joe Garner, the man who should have been in the stands. To make matters worse, Preston were awarded a second-half penalty. It was scored almost inevitably by Garner. Shrewsbury took the lead at home to Oldham but couldn't hold on for the win. Having scored the equaliser, Charlie McDonald set up Danny Filskirk to condemn the Shrews to defeat. And Burton had substitute Billy Key to thank for unlocking the Mansfield defence with the only goal at the Pirelli Stadium.
You've got that long to get. And one other result to mention, Cheltenham had a goalless draw with Bristol Rovers.
Well, the national and international news is a few moments away. Now let's take a look at what's coming up.
Cameron's benefit clampdown on low-paid, low-skilled workers from Europe. One EU commissioner says it risks Britain looking nasty. The PM says it's the fairness British people expect. Nigella Lawson and Charles Saatchi's marriage of secrecy. A court's told she's an habitual criminal if his claims of her drug use are true. Calls for the NHS in England to extend the smoking ban to the areas outside hospitals too. And by royal appointment, a backing singer to John Bon Jovi and Miss Taylor Swift. Join Mary Nightingale and me at 6:30.
Thousands of food lovers have been at one of the country's biggest food shows in the NEC in Birmingham.
Fueled by dozens of TV shows and cookbooks which sell in their thousands, people who think they're a dab hand in the kitchen have been taking a look at all their new friends, or new trends I should say. Our correspondent Mark Goff joined them.
We're a nation of foodies and budding chefs, so we're better to find out what people love to cook.
Spag bowl. What's wrong with that?
Adventurous.
Yeah.
But we moved on from the 70s.
Yeah. Okay. What did I do? Last night we had a cheese stuffed chicken breast wrapped in pancetta.
Thai tom yum soup.
Now you're talking.
Yeah, see, that was good. Yeah. Oh,
Thai
yeah.
tom yum soup.
Yeah, they're pretty good at
What,
that.
tom yum soup?
Yeah.
Right,
Good.
okay.
Yeah, that's
What does the baby eat?
Oh, so far just local milk.
Locally sourced.
Yeah.
Are you the cook at home?
Yes, definitely.
What's your best dish?
Oh.
Bearing in mind, you've got some awful sweets in your hands.
No, that's a Christmas present.
Okay, that's fair enough. So what's your best dish?
I do a mean Yorkshire pudding.
Who's the cook?
Me.
What's your best dish?
Rogan Josh.
Oh, lovely.
Or cauliflower cheese.
That's right. Cauliflower cheese is good.
It's beautiful.
It's gone out of fashion, but I think it's a good dish.
I'm old-fashioned.
We're old, you see.
We are old.
That's
We
what it
are
is.
old. Okay, so is that tonight's tea?
She actually
Oh no, tonight's tea's. I'm having all the tastes from here.
Is that it?
That's it for tonight.
Oh, right.
And the drinks of wine in between.
Is that what you're holding on to?
She also does white fish, cod with pasta sauce. That's a nice dish.
No, what,
Really
boil in
just
the bag one?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
What's the big seller?
It seems to be the fig bread today, which is going the best so far.
If there was one tip you could give a budding cook at home, what would it be? Either about the gear they buy, or about the food they cook, or the way they cook.
If you're a budding cook at home, I think what you really got to do is push those boundaries. Go for something that you wouldn't normally cook.
Don't try too hard. Keep it simple and practice.
You've got until Sunday to get all the practice you need. Mark Goff, ITV News.
Now, there are just 4.5 hours left for the owner of a £12 million lottery ticket to come forward.
Yes, it was bought somewhere in the Ladywood district of Birmingham back in May. And Camelot teams were out on Monday encouraging people to dig behind the sofa. Now, if the cash isn't claimed before 11 o'clock tonight, it'll go to charity.
£12 million.
12 million. And on 10 million, you get about £50,000 a month interest alone. So
wow.
You could retire quite
Even at these
happily.
rates. Wow, yes. Fantastic. Anyway, on we go. One Midlands MP did his bit for charity at Prime Minister's questions today.
He certainly did. Lichfield MP Michael Fabricant, seen here sitting down on the left of George Freeman, turned up to the Commons wearing an enormous moustache to complement his normal unruly hairstyle. Now, it was actually for the men's health campaign Movember, which encourages men to grow a moustache during November to raise money and awareness of prostate cancer.
What's she looking at?
It's a good question. That was quick.
Let's have the weather. Here's Lucy.
It could be cool in Birmingham, but somewhere in the world, the sun is shining. ITV Central Weather, sponsored by Turkish Airlines.
Hello, well, a spectacular picture for you tonight, taken in Shropshire. Thank you to Jason Garton for this. You can see the mist rolling over the hills there. More mist to come as we head through the next few hours as well. And it's turning colder from Friday onwards. This high pressure allowing various weather fronts to move in our direction, including this cold front here that's going to drag much chillier air in from the north. In fact, you can see that here on the temperature chart as it spills in through the day on Friday into Saturday. So more in the way of sunshine, but a return to cold, frosty nights by the time we get to Friday and Saturday. Temperatures, though, holding up above freezing tonight, so a frost-free night to come. Staying dry too, but cloudy with those mist patches forming. The mist patches hanging around first thing tomorrow morning as well, and the cloud building all the time from the north, with the potential for a few spots of light rain or drizzle there. Shouldn't really amount to much, though. In the afternoon, very limited brightness, highs of 8 or 9 degrees Celsius, and then on that cold front, some wet and windy weather moving in as we move into Friday, so the wind feeling bitterly cold, temperatures taking a tumble through the day.
ITV Central Weather, sponsored by Turkish Airlines.
And we've just time to remind you of our top stories tonight here on ITV News Central. A Coventry businessman who stabbed a family of 4 to death has been found guilty of their murders. 54-year-old Anjan Du was convicted at Northampton Crown Court of murdering Jifeng Ding, his wife, and their 2 daughters.
A grandfather from Walsall is calling for a change to dangerous dog legislation after his granddaughter was, he says, almost killed by a neighbour's dog. Amy Hyrook, who was saved by her father, needed 20 stitches in the back of her head after she was attacked by a neighbour's Japanese Akita.
And there are just 4.5 hours left for the owner of a £12 million lottery ticket bought in Ladywood to come forward. If it isn't claimed by 11 o'clock tonight, it'll go to charity.
Someone hopefully will be very, very lucky. In the meantime, that's it from us. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.